Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Inspire Before We Expire show. I am your host, Terrell Sumter. Guys, I'm very grateful, thankful to see another day. That's never a promise. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start today's show, I just want you to take some time as we in the beginning of the week. We're in a new month, 2 months before the new year. And I want you to take some time and just close your eyes, 10 to 15 seconds, and visualize. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 6 months? And I want you to breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Then I want you to open. Now, guys, I know that yesterday had its challenges, but today has its possibilities. I know sometimes we may feel alone on this journey, but you're never alone. There's always somebody out there to not give you a hand out, but a hand up in a matter of time as you cross paths with that person. And guys, I want you to take some time to get your notepads, your pens out, and take some notes because you're going to need it. For my special guest today, I mean, a phenomenal person. Before the interview, we got to chop it up and get to know each other a little bit more. Although this man is a Dallas Cowboys fan, it's all good, you know. But I just really want to, want you guys to really listen, take some time, and implement what he's been sharing with you guys throughout this interview. This gentleman is a 12-minute a day think it be technique is recognized today as the top practical application in the world of the legendary book Think and Grow Rich. When he applied his technique in his own life, he saw his income go over to 5 million a year. Wow. Previously, for 20 years as an entrepreneur, this gentleman has earned low six figures a year. The 20 times difference happened because his daily technique significantly increased his control over himself by probably double. It also made him laser focused every day. Only the 2 to 3 things that move the needle in his business also allowed him to rapidly evolve his strategy for success. He was simply operating every day at a higher level than he ever had before, and it showed up in his income. The science behind his technique was profiled in a Time magazine cover story. He had started out as a CPA, but became an entrepreneur at the age of 30. He owned companies in a variety of industries: real estate, development, a bank, and a restaurant, a children's book publishing company, and an automotive company. But upon reaching so, he wasn't as successful as he thought he should be, right? Then he found the top book on success and achievement ever written, Think and Grow Rich, with over 100 million copies sold. And this gentleman has developed his 12-minute a day technique around book central's contract concept, which you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. Ain't that the truth? A practical application, this legendary book didn't exist before he created it. His company think it be it the top company in success through science category of success and human achievement field. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to stand up as I introduce you to my good guy, the phenomenal, the man himself, John Mitchell. John, welcome to the Inspire Before We Expire, man.
Terrell, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for taking time out your busy schedule to be here today. So, John, for those who may not know you, man, if you can give us a deep dive into your story, that'd be awesome.
Okay, be glad to. Well, as you mentioned, I started out as a CPA and became an entrepreneur when I was 30. But when I turned 50, Terrell, I just wasn't as successful as I thought I should be. And I had two goals in my life. The first one was to make enough money so I didn't have to work. And the second one was to find the woman of my dreams. And so at 50, I was falling short on both of them. And as an entrepreneur, I was blessed to always make well into six figures a year, but never close to seven figures a year. And on finding the girl at 50, I'd never been married. But I can tell you, Terrell, it was not from lack of interviewing. I did a lot of interviewing. But then, really, the defining moment happened like 3 days after I turned 50. And I hope this doesn't sound too materialistic, but I realized that if I didn't start netting over $1 million a year, I would never have that exceptional life I always dreamed of. the, you know, the freedom, the lifestyle, the sense of accomplishment. So I came to a realization. I realized that hard work didn't work. While it worked for making six figures a year, boy, I was living proof it didn't work for making seven. And I just knew there had to be something else. So I made the decision that, by God, I was going to find out what that something else is. And so it was like 3 months after I turned 50, a real pearl of wisdom hit me. Why not find the top book in the world on success and achievement ever written, and then apply it literally word for word to my life? Now, the logic that was so simple and compelling. And so after some research, I found that there actually is one book that excels over all others on the topic of success. And it's the book Think and Grow Rich. Are you familiar with that book, Terrell?
Yes,
Good,
very
good.
familiar.
You've read it?
Yes, I've also read the new one they have out too. Think and Grow Rich, the Legacy as well.
Right, right. Good, good. Well, here's what's really significant, and it's a couple of things. First, the book has sold over 100 million copies, as you mentioned. But the next best-selling book on success has sold just under 10 million copies. So clearly, it's the top book ever written on success, literally by a factor of 10. And here's the second thing: the book's central concept has created more millionaires and billionaires than any other book on the planet. So once I realized those two things, of course, I got the book, read the book, and the central concept is what you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life.
Hmm.
Now let me say that again so you can think about it.
Hmm.
What you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. So I get that. I figured that out, and then I discover a problem, and it was a big problem. You know, great idea, but how to apply it in a practical way?
Hmm.
And so, Terrell, I don't know, for probably a couple weeks. I keep in mind this is back when I was in my 50s, or just turning 50. I mope around for a couple weeks, and I realized, hey, I gotta create the practical application for myself. So that's what I did, and I applied it to a new business I was starting in the financial services industry. And over 9 years, I continually tweaked and refined my 12-minute a day methodology. And over 9 years, my income went from low six figures a year to over $5 million a year.
Hmm.
And of course, I felt so incredibly blessed. I mean, it was quite a change from my 20-year history. It was like a 25-time increase. And Terrell, surprisingly, I could see why it was happening. By applying science to my life for the first time ever, I was influencing my daily actions and thoughts.
Hmm.
Clearly, I was operating at a higher level than I ever had before. I was playing the game of life really at a higher level, and I could feel it. And I was just way more focused, disciplined, and leveraged. And really, the best news was that I met the woman of my dreams from applying my methodology. So, to wrap up this story, the results really changed me as an entrepreneur. And I became fascinated by the fact that you could take two key scientific principles and apply them to your life, and so materially impact your success and achievement in life.
Hmm.
And Terrell, it amazed me that such a small change that only takes 12 minutes a day could radically change your outcomes. And I found it so intellectually interesting that I ended up selling my company. And I guess like 3 months after I sold my company, I had the good fortune to meet the former chancellor and president at the University of Texas. And I told
Hmm.
him my story. And he said, hey, you have to teach this mental technique at the University of Texas. And
Hmm.
why don't we teach it together?
That's amazing.
So, so today that's what I do. But I got to tell you, my passion is teaching it to people that are driven to achieve more, oftentimes entrepreneurs who are struggling to cross over to netting 7 figures a year, just like I did,
Hmm.
and who are determined to get the exceptional life and have a level of control over their life that they've never experienced before. So that's my real passion.
That's big, man. Honestly, I love the way you just dived in on it too, as well. I just think that's amazing, and it's never too late. As you said, at the age of 30, you was an entrepreneur. You had some success, but you felt like you still wasn't just fulfilled yet. And
Right,
it just
right.
came towards, this book came along your journey, along your path. So what was it, who was it that introduced you to Think and Grow Rich? And what are some key principles you've applied from that book to your life that can help some of our younger listeners today do the same?
Well, I don't know who introduced it to me, to be honest with you. In fact, I read it for the first time when I was 41, but it
Okay.
had, and I thought it was a great book at the time,
Yeah.
but it didn't change my life. And I see that when I read it at 50, I mean, I felt the pressure, Terrell, at 50 that it's now or never.
Mhm.
You gotta start making big money. You got to find the girl. This is, you got to make it happen. And that
Mhm.
pressure made me dig into the book a little deeper. And what's interesting, a couple of things I think are interesting about this. First of all, as we learned, um, Think and Grow Rich is the top book on success by a factor of 10, with 100 million people reading it. But interestingly, only 1 in 6 people knows of the book, and only 1 in 100 knows its central concept. Yet everybody wants to be more successful.
Hmm.
Well, I think that's happening because of, we live in this world of clutter, and 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 we have to overcome that. And you may think, and this sort of gets to the point uh, that I think you're asking. Um, so if 100 million people have read it, why aren't 100 million people wildly successful, right?
Hmm.
Well, there's a reason. In the book, on the first page, he says there's a secret to success,
Hmm.
but I'm only going to give you half of the secret. It's
Hmm.
on you to figure out the other half.
Hmm.
Well, that probably worked well many, many, many years ago when the book was written, when we weren't living in this fast-paced world we live in. But today, people won't dig into it to the level that I discovered I had to dig in to get that full secret.
Hmm.
Uh, he teases you with everything starts with a thought. That's the half of the secret he gives you. But
Right.
but I saw that it was much deeper, and also saw there wasn't a practical way to apply it. And so I now reflect back and see that pressure of 50, and knowing I had to make it happen in my 50s, was that the pressure was the incentive to dig deeper into that book than I had previously, and deeper than most people by their nature will.
That's awesome, man. And I wanted to ask as well, because I've heard you say it a few times, 50. Why 50, man? I really wanted to just to dive deep onto that. Like, I just think that's an interesting age. And it's probably one of the first interviews for someone to say that old of, really achieving that certain success that you always desire. So why 50, John?
Well, it's because when you turn a decade birthday, I mean, you're going to turn 30 in 3 years, right?
Yes.
And whenever you turn a decade birthday, trust me, you really look at your life hard. I
Mm.
mean, you really look at it hard. You're going to do that when you turn 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. It's just, trust me on this, this will happen. And, and I think it's a great process. And I think when I turned 50, the number one thing I got was that if you do life like everybody else, you're getting an average life.
So
It's
true.
it's pure math.
So
If you,
true.
and if you look if you look around and you're doing life like everybody else,
Mm,
you're going to get an average life. And what I discovered at 50 was that the other thing was that, I didn't have a way of creating success in my life that I could succinctly articulate.
mm,
Like most people, all I did was I like put my head down and worked really hard and hoped for the best.
mm.
Well, that doesn't work. That's what everybody is doing. Everybody's working hard.
So true.
But in the end, they don't really have a strategy for creating success in their life that they can articulate. And the end result is they just hope for the best. And once I got Think and Grow Rich, then I'm like, oh, I got it. What I
Mm,
envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in my life.
yeah. Mhm.
That's how I create success. And then I had a succinct way of articulating it.
Yeah.
Does that make
Abs-
sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that as well. I love that you also like kind of use the title from Think and Grow Rich to Think It Be It. That's
Right,
awesome because it's like about applying those actions, taking daily actions, right?
right.
So my next question, man, I wanted to ask you, man, why was it so much important to John Mitchell to really make enough money so he don't have to work and find that woman of his dreams at the age of 50 years old?
Well, isn't that what we all want? I'm really, don't you think?
Absolutely.
I mean, life is really pretty simple.
Yes.
Uh, we don't really want to work. We do stuff that pays the bills and keeps a roof over our head, but we want to do stuff that do whatever we want to do. And
Mm,
I think back and I'm like. Uh, and I do it from a perspective of of being blessed to be successful. But I didn't even want to imagine what life would be like if I didn't have to work because I wasn't sure I would ever get there. So I didn't want to be disappointed. But now that I'm on the other side, like of course I'm passionate about what we're talking about, but
mm,
like I'm play blues guitar in a band, and
mm,
I just have a lot of things, and I'm driven by what I'm passionate around, not what I got to do to earn a living. So fortunately,
mm,
that's a thing of the past, and I think that one of the other things that came from turning 50 is I realized that the solution to creating the exceptional life was not in my head, because if it was in my head, Trill, I'd already have implemented it. And I
mm,
realized, oh, I don't have a way of creating success, and the solution is not in my head. Therefore, it has to come from the outside. And
mm,
that's why I decided we'll go find the top book in the world on success. That probably is a good place to
mm.
go look.
Mm.
Does that all make sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Nah, I think that's important. I love that you said that as well because, I have a lot of younger listeners, John, listening right now, tuned in from around the world. Just they need to know like having that special person is nothing like sharing that experience.
Right,
Going through the ups and downs, first when you guys meet, and then you look back at the time you met to seeing how far you guys came together. It's just magical, to see how much you've accomplished, but also that gritty. So we know that every relationship has its ups and downs, but it's nothing to put that puzzle back together when it may be broken or so. So
right, right. And
I
and I think for someone young or old, it doesn't matter really. But
yeah.
what matters in choosing a spouse, a mate, I see that it comes down to sure, us guys, we're all about the looks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're just biologically programmed that way. But what matters is, do they make you laugh? Do they
Hmm.
have a good sense of humor? Do they have the same values you have? Are they chill? And if you get that, uh, that's everything.
Right. Indeed. It's nothing like that, man. Thank you for going over that as well. I wanted to ask John, because you're a man who've studied, who've listened, and who've implemented. and I'm real big on that. So I wanted to ask you, man, how do we become more present? How do we create a life of intention?
Well, here's the thing I think that is critical. And um, as you get older, if you're in your 20s, you'll appreciate this as you get older. Um, you're working hard, but if you're not as successful as you think you should be, you're going to discover it's not your fault, because there's one key thing you got to appreciate. You're running your life with an antiquated operating system. And what I mean by that is you're innately geared to survival, to daily survival. And the problem with that is three things. First of all, it causes 90% of your thoughts to be fear-based. You have less than 20% control over yourself, and you're reactive rather than proactive on your important agenda. Well, Terrell, that's great if you're running from lions and your daily survival is depending on it. I mean, you want to be reactive, not proactive.
Mm,
But the problem with it is that it's exactly the opposite of the way you need to be if you want to be productive, creative, and happy. And
mm,
the only way you can override your innate operating system is through daily programming.
mm.
And that's what this 12-minute a day mental technique that I'm going to teach your audience does. So it overcomes that antiquated operating system.
I love that. Speaking of
And
12 minutes a day, let's go ahead and dive into that, John. It's folks that's listening right now, take out your notepads, your pens if you haven't already. And also, this is a method, this is a technique that is recognized today as a top practical application in the world. So congratulations to John on that as well. So John, if you can dive deep on that, that'd be awesome, man.
I will. And one thing I want to sort of set up foundationally before I give you the details is that over the last like 20 years, there's been this intense interest in the scientific community as to what separates the mega achievers from everyone else.
Mm,
And what they found is pretty simple. It comes down to two things: control of self and focus.
mm,
Well, control of self, well, focus is your daily thoughts.
mm,
Control of yourself is your daily actions. And
mm,
those are exactly the two things this 12-minute a day technique addresses. And and what's sort of unique about what I'm going to explain to you is that everything else in the success and human achievement field is strategies, and oftentimes really good strategies. But you got strategies coming out your ears. What you need is great strategies to show up in your daily thoughts and actions, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And so here's essentially how this 12-minute a day technique works. So again, we're applying the central concept of Think and Grow Rich. What you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life.
mm,
So to apply that, we take your life and compress it down to one sheet of paper, front and back. On the front is the ideal you in the five key areas of your life: yourself, your health, your romantic relationship, your spirituality, and your career. So, ideal you in those five areas on the
mm,
front. Now, on the back are your improvements you want in each of those five areas,
mm,
as well as your top three goals for the quarter. Now, one of the goals will be on career, one on your romantic relationship, one on your health, typically. And then
mm,
on the bottom, we're tracking your key behaviors associated with those goals. And so, and keep in mind, so this one sheet of paper is sitting in a plastic stand that is on your nightstand. Can you
mm.
picture that? This one sheet of paper, front and back, is in a plastic stand on your nightstand.
Yes.
And so every morning, first thing, you grab it, and essentially you're feeding yourself, here's exactly the person I want to be, here's exactly what I want to accomplish, and here's precisely how I'm going to achieve my clearly defined goals. And after approximately 21 days, Then the science kicks in, and what you're feeding to yourself shows up automatically without thinking. And that's the magic of this.
Mm.
When you feed it to yourself every day, literally after 21 days, you become what you read. As hard as that may be to believe, that is what happens, and that's what the science proves.
Mm.
And I'll give you an example of how that works. So, as I mentioned, I didn't get married until my 50s. And unfortunately, my married friends didn't tell me that every once in a while your spouse will say something irritating. I mean, who knew? And so when it happened to me, I didn't like what would come out of my mouth. And I was like, man, I tell you, it's so hard for me to get a girl to marry me. I
Mhm.
darn sure didn't want to lose her. And so I thought, I'm gonna fix this. And so I thought, I'm gonna be flexible, patient, and thoughtful. So
Mm.
every day I'm feeding that to myself. Well, Terrell, um, 15 days in, I'm no more flexible, patient, or thoughtful than I was when I started.
Yeah.
But about the 21st or 22nd day, Ginger says something irritating. And in that moment, I'm flexible, patient, and thoughtful. I mean, that's who I had become. And the reason it didn't work 15 days in was because uh, 15 days in, my subconscious mind thought the programming was going away. But after about 21 days, it realized it wasn't going away. And then it fed it up to myself automatically without thinking. And that's the power of this.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Nah, I love the way you just went on to describe just the whole 12 minute a day. And I know it was a process of creating it and everything of that nature as well. So tell us about the process of like, because we know it doesn't happen overnight. And that's what I like to like really, get into as well, to let these people know that, yes, he's created this system to help a lot of entrepreneurs and many others around the world, become success and also gain a level of achievement, but also the process is what's important too. So if you can talk about the process, that'd be awesome, John.
Well, and let me tell you a little of the science behind it because this will help you understand the process. So here's how the human mind works. The conscious mind sets your intention and is influenced by logic. And the unconscious mind controls your everyday actions and ongoing thoughts. And it's only influenced by repetition. And as an example, um, let's say you want to lose weight. Well, the conscious mind sets the intention to lose weight based on the logic of the health benefits, right? Well, the reason people aren't losing weight is not from lack of intention. It's from lack of controlling the part of their brain that controls their everyday actions,
Mm.
what they're eating, and their level of exercise. And that part of the brain is the subconscious mind, and it doesn't care about the logic. It only responds to repetition. That's why when you feed yourself this 12-minute a day mental technique that I just described, it's impacting your subconscious mind, which is controlling your thoughts, which is what controls your everyday actions.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very powerful. Very powerful.
And
Guys,
so,
take action and implement these strategies.
and if a lot of people will ask me, well, wait a minute, your income went from 200,000 a year to 5 million a year. How
Mm.
the heck does that happen
Mm.
with this 12-minute a day technique? Well, here's how it happens. So I'm feeding to myself every day. Here's four things about my career. I'm feeding my business plan, my succinct articulation of my strategy for success, the two or three things that move the needle, and the linchpin issue that takes my business to the next level. So I've got a succinct articulation of those four things in this 12-minute a day mental technique, and I'm feeding it to myself every day. Well, three things happen. First of all, my business plan is so easy to implement because it's so top of mind. And secondly, I become laser focused only on what moves the needle. And I saw that, time is my most precious commodity. And when you're defining, oh, here's exactly what moves the needle, and there's only usually two or three things. There's not more than two or three things that really move the needle. When you're feeding that to yourself every day, all the other distractions fall by the wayside. And then the third thing, and this Terrell really surprised me. I saw that my strategy for success and business plan evolved 20 times quicker than it ever did before. Because when you're feeding that strategy for success and business plan to your subconscious mind every morning, it's challenging it, it's refining it, it's just tweaking it, and you feel this momentum pulling, where you're going business wise 20 times quicker than it ever happened before. And such a game changer. And that's why I say, once I started doing this, I'm like, wow, I'm playing this game of life at a higher level. And of course, I'm having more success. I'm way higher than I was back in my 30s and 40s and 20s.
Right. Right. So what was it like though? Like, because it seemed like like you say, you was laser focused,
Right.
at this time and point of your life. So going from low six figures, as we know, like that's still a whole lot. But you just obviously wanted a million, which everybody want to become a millionaire. So did it feel different? Like, how did it feel to you, John, when you really now met your goal at a million and then exceeding that? I think that's important to really go over and dive
Right.
into as well.
Oh, I tell you, it's was such an amazing, wonderful thing that I felt so blessed that I had discovered this technique that allowed me to do it. Because, here's the thing I see that I didn't fully get until I turned 50, and this is great for your audience. You have got to grab a hold of your life and make it happen. It's all on you. And because most people sort of resist doing that, and I think I did too, even until I got to be 50. But once I had the methodology for, you know, creating the life I wanted with this 12-minute a day technique, then it all opened up. I was blessed to, make big money, and it wasn't so much the money. I mean, sure, I loved the, the sports car and the paid for house on the lake. I mean, I like a nice lifestyle. I don't know if that makes me materialistic, but I don't care. I like it. But I see the best thing in that it gave me was, first of all, freedom of my time to do whatever I wanted to do each day, and the sense of accomplishment was, huge, and it allowed me to see that there's more important things than money. It allows me to have a great relationship with my wife, and it was such it's just such a change from when I was, grinding away 60, 70 hours a week. It felt like I was beating my head against the wall because I just didn't get the traction. There was this disconnect between the effort I was putting in and what I was getting out. And I couldn't figure out, well, how do you change that? And like I said, the the solution was not in my head, and it had to come from the outside. And I make that comparison to your audience. If they're not where they want to be, and they're not really even that close, then the solution isn't in your head. And that's what I want to give you, is the solution. It's coming from the outside for you, just like it came from the outside for me.
Absolutely. And as you spoke of freedom, what does that look like for you, John? What is freedom? Why is that so much important to you?
Well, because life is precious, and I just wanted to to save her life. I realized how amazingly precious and short life is.
Mm.
And oftentimes we're doing things work-wise that we like and we're interested in, but it's still work, you
Mm.
know. And I don't know. One of the joys for me has been to get into music, and you know, I didn't start playing guitar until I was I think 57. And now I'm in a band. I'm going to record a song for my wife.
Okay.
I don't know how good it's going to be,
Okay. I'm
but
sure you're going to do good, man.
well, I don't know. I think I got it in me,
Yeah.
uh, but that's what I'm talking about. You know, that freedom to just live your life any way you want to and do
Mm.
whatever you want to do, not what you have to do. And
Mm.
you know, one thing I think you'd find interesting, probably 3 years ago, I thought, you know, I'm going to go find the top expert in the world on success
Mhm.
and show him what I created and see what he thinks about it. You know, are there flaws in it? Is there something else like it out there? And so I figured out how to get to what many consider the top expert in the world on success, and I was able to spend 3 days with him, and I show him my technique, and he looks at it pretty close, and yeah, he says, you know, John, this is good. And he looks at it closer, and he goes, wow, this is really good. But he says, you got a problem. He says, most people are not going to spend 12 minutes a day on anything to increase their success in life. And I'm like, well, Darren, how can that be? I mean, this is based on the top book in the world on success by a factor of 10, and it's only 12 minutes a day.
Mm.
And he goes, well, you'll spend 12 minutes, I'll spend 12 minutes. But he says, that's the dirty little secret of the success and human achievement field.
Mm.
Most people will not spend any amount of time to increase their success. And he says the reason is the majority of people, more success is merely a preference.
Mm.
It's not a necessity, it's just a preference.
Mm.
But there's some people that are just driven to achieve more and they see how precious their life is and they want to get the most out of it. They
Mm.
want to have that financial freedom. They want to have that great romantic relationship. They want to be fit and trim. And and he says so many people sleepwalk through life and they don't react to good ideas even though they know they're good ideas. But
Mm.
you just got to find people that are uh, you know, appreciate that success is a necessity for them, and you got something that'll take them to where they want to go. And so that was really helpful to me for him to share that with me.
Indeed. No, that's powerful. You spoke of Darren Hardy, right?
Right,
That's
right,
amazing. That's amazing. So you say you spent the 3-day weekend out with there with him or
right,
so.
right.
Okay. So during that time and during that moment, you know, of really sharing something with Darren and he's seen something big out of it, but he also like just gave his insight as well on that most people they're not going to take that time, but some people who are really driven, who are really laser focused, like a young John or so like
Right,
that, you
right.
know, they are going to take the time because everybody want that success, but they just don't know how to take the steps and learn to implement it into their life. So from that conversation with Darren, what stood out most to you and what did you learn? What did you learn most from just that 3-day weekend with Darren?
You know, I think the surprise was, of course, we all have a tendency to look at the world from our own vantage point, and I couldn't believe that that for most people they're not going to spend 12 minutes a day. I mean, but and you know, it sort of changed my thinking uh, about how success works, and I mean, just look at your friends. I mean, I love my friends, uh, and but they're not all wildly successful. You know, so, and I see that just what Darren was talking about. You know, they like to be more successful, but it's just a preference. It's not a necessity. But then I have other friends, and me included, where I want to be more and more successful. It's a
Mm.
priority, and I see that what I'm sharing with you, this is a new way of thinking, and it's really a new way of doing life, and it's living a life of immense intention and clarity, and it's really, I look at it as a success formula, and I think that one of the key things I learned too from talking to Darren is that if you want to have the exceptional life, again, you can't do life like everybody else, and you have to have an advantage in life.
Mm.
And that's what this 12-minute a day technique is for me and the many people that are doing it. They look at it as their unfair edge in creating the exceptional life, and it's so they look at it as a success formula.
That's powerful. That's real powerful. Thank you for sharing, John. John, I wanted to take some time, man, as I do each and every interview, just to acknowledge you, man, show some gratitude, brother. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being present.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing so much value with our listeners, man, bringing your authenticity, bringing yourself, bringing so much to this community here, and sharing with a lot of our younger, middle-aged listeners, whoever around the world, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, or so like that. But I need you all to really, that's listening right now, to implement, honestly, to listen and to implement, take notes. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen with consistency and being committed, truly, truly committed. So, this gentleman, John, he's phenomenal. I'm really enjoying this interview so far, and I'm glad we really here today, man, honestly. So I thank you for really, being present and sharing so much with us as we continue this interview.
Well, and I have a gift for your audience.
Okay.
I have created webinar, a free webinar, uh,
Awesome.
that will explain this in detail, and it will explain how you can apply it to your life. And so go to theunfairedge.com.
Mm.
Let me say that again. Theunfairedge.com. And this will educate you in more detail about how this works, why it works, shows you examples, and as I've developed this, I wanted to make it affordable for people, and in doing this, because it's a new way of thinking, a new way of doing life. Some people just want to take the course and do it themselves, and that's fine. And other people want more one-on-one involvement, and so we accommodate either way. And so, but again, go to that free webinar. It's less than an hour of your life to change your life. And again, theunfairedge.com is where you can get to it.
Awesome. I love that. And you'll be talking about the 12-day methodology steps, right?
Right, right,
Okay.
right.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, John, okay. So I have a real deep question for you here.
Okay.
Or so I like to get in challenges, John, because we know, you've achieved some success, right? But we know to get to that, we sometimes go through some pitfalls. We go through rock bottom. So I wanted to ask you, man, what do you feel like your biggest roadblock has been thus far, and how did you overcome?
That's a great question. Um, you know, I think this is how life typically works. When you're young, when you're in your 20s, you think you're going to tear the world up, and it's just a matter of time. And then you get in your 30s, and you're not tearing it up to the degree you want, and that's frustrating. And then when you get in your 40s, you're still not tearing it up, and maybe now you've gone through a divorce or so, something traumatic like that, and as you get older, a lot of people get more um, frustrated with life, and I see it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, again, if you're young, realize if you do life like everybody else, you're going to get an average life, and if that's not acceptable to you, and keep in mind, that is acceptable to a lot of people, which
Mm,
is great. But if it's not acceptable to you, you have to do something different. And
mm,
and that's exactly what I'm trying to give people is that different path. And it only takes 12 minutes a day. And how do you argue? It's applying the top book in the world on success to your life. How do you argue with that?
right.
I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
And
And
what one thing that's worth mentioning to you is, because I get this fairly often, is this like meditation? Well, it's the opposite of meditation. You know, meditation quiets the mind. This focuses the mind. And I think once you sort of see the power of focusing the mind around exactly what you want and how you're going to get it, you can appreciate, just common sense would tell you the power of this.
yes, absolutely. I love that. I wanted to dive in as well, as I know that you're also a professor at the University of Texas as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you got introduced to the president. He say, "Hey, man, we should teach together." So
Right.
I love that conversation, man. I just think that one conversation always changes the communication between two. So I wanted to get into like, what do you really enjoy most about teaching? And what's that one message that you got from maybe one or two of your students that really stood out to you until today? You just look back and you just smile on.
Well, I tell you, I love my students, and I see that with any class that we teach. I've been doing this, I guess, for I think 4 years now. You know, you can tell in the first three classes, you got about a third of the class is really getting it. They're just really sharp people. And at the University of Texas, we're proud of the fact that they only take the uh, top 5% of high school graduates can get into the University of Texas at Austin at the flagship university. And so you've got, to begin with, really smart people. But you'll see in life, the smartest people are not always the most successful.
So
They
true.
don't that but I see with about a third of my students, you just can tell they have that it factor, and they are soaking this stuff up, and they are the ones that want to have the exceptional life, and they get it very easily that you can't do life like everybody else,
Mhm.
and so they'll embrace full on what I'm sharing with them. Then I got another third that candidly is interested in it, but they don't maybe have the maturity yet to understand that that the average way of doing life produces the average life, but they're certainly receptive to it. And then you got a third that probably don't get it at all, and that's okay. But it's such a joy to have so many of my students come and go, man, this I see this is worth my 4 years of going to college, learning just this 12-minute a day technique, because I can use this for the rest of my life, and that's a joy when I can see that
Mm,
I've impacted their life, because I feel so blessed for my life that that's my mission in life, is to help other people.
I love that. I love that. I think that's amazing, really, because, here you develop the, something for the world, for entrepreneurs, for business owners, etc. And it's helping, it's working. It's a proven method, and now you're
Right.
in one of the biggest colleges out there. University of Texas has a great academic athletic program, and things of that nature. And you're teaching, because someone's seen something else and say, "Hey, man, you should come to my school and teach
Right.
that as well." So I just think that that's real powerful. Or so, and I commend you on that, man. Honestly, because I know some of these students are listening or will be listening and will be so inspired and intrigued and moved positively from this message that you've delivered today and everything of that nature. So that's awesome, man. John, as you in this point of your life, man, as you've met your goals, man. You went from 6 figures a year. We're not gonna say low six because 6 figures is a lot. But John say, man, I want to become a millionaire or so like that. And you've reached that by reading a book, and not just reading, but by really reading consistently daily and applying some actions and then twisting third. It's like amazing, man, when you think about these things, because it's creativity and it's an invention. That's what it is. So I wanted just to ask, man, what do you feel like is missing right now in your life, man?
In my life,
Yeah, what do you
there,
feel like
there
is missing?
there's nothing missing.
Okay.
I mean, I want to help more people, but um, and so that's the challenge: is how do I get my message out? But I want to share something with you that happened last night that's interesting.
Awesome.
Uh, so I have a guy here in town in Austin that's 29 years old, and he's really my protege. He took my 12-minute a day uh, course in online course, and he wants to be an entrepreneur. And so many people want to be entrepreneurs. And he was telling me last night, he says, everybody that wants to be an entrepreneur thinks that they got to come up with the next Facebook or whatever it is and create something amazing and they're going to get rich. And he says, in this online course that I have, I give the 10 entrepreneurial lessons you must know if you're going to make over $1 million a year. And he says, you open my eyes to the idea that it's not about coming up with the next Facebook. The way easier way to become an entrepreneur is go into a business that already exists, that the market has already accepted it, and just do it better than the other companies in that business. Because, and here's what you don't know at your age, on as a general rule, the way that businesses in the United States are run on a scale of 1 to 10, when you factor in marketing, employee empowerment, and culture, it's about a 3. I'm serious.
Mm,
But I say this with a lot of experience, and
mm,
it's a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, pick a business that you like, that the market's already accepted, and probably go to work in that business, and then start your own business in that industry. That is a way better way to become an entrepreneur than to have to come up with some idea that the market hasn't accepted yet. Because at the university level, we see all these entrepreneurship is all built around coming up with the amazing idea. Well, only about 3% of them work. So 97% of them don't work. Well, that's not a very good path to entrepreneurship, in my view.
mm. I
Does that
love
make sense?
that. Yes, absolutely. And when did you really start to see that this methodology, strategy, technique that you've created, when did you first see it was going to take off? Like did you like start to see that it was going to be one of the biggest in the world for people really to take time, and it could be a change of a life, just like Think and Grow Rich, the book.
Right, right. Well, it immediately started impacting me, and once I was blessed to have enough money and didn't have to work and I could do whatever I wanted to, I was felt so incredibly blessed that I wanted to give this to other people. And I'm like, well, this is a no-brainer. All I'm doing, the real genius is the guy that wrote the book Think and Grow Rich,
Yes.
but what I'm giving people that he didn't give people is the practical application. And
Mm.
so um, that's my mission, is to give it to people so they can create their exceptional life.
Yes, absolutely. That's amazing. John, I know we're about to get out of here in less than a few. I wanted to ask, man, before we get out of here, I just want to give you some room, give you some stage to share something that you haven't got to share in no interview. Maybe, just something you haven't got to share with somebody in a while. I would like for you just to have that stage and share with our younger listeners right now.
Well, I think maybe the thing I would share is this. I saw that Gallup does a poll assessing the level of stress around the world. And the United States is the most stressful country in the world, and we're at an all-time level of stress. Well, why is that happening? Well, it's happening because people don't feel like they have control over their life. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what's causing stress. If you feel like you have control, then you don't feel stress. But if you don't feel like you have control, you do feel stress. And it's just that simple. And that's the power of when you compress your life down to one sheet of paper using the template that I will give you. Uh, it's a game changer. Literally, I love the power of walking in my bedroom and grabbing my my one sheet that's sitting in a plastic stand on my nightstand and holding my life, and I can look at that in my hand and feel the power of, boy, I have control of my life. I'm living a life of immense intention and clarity, and this is powerful. And I don't feel stress at all.
Mm.
And so, I think that's the message I want to give people is if you feel stress, it's because you don't feel in control of your life.
Mm. And how do we, like you say, because that's the world we live in and times we live in right now. So when there's sirens continuously going on, how do we silence the noise and become more clear with our vision and our journey?
Well, I think that you have to realize, again, you got to overcome that antiquated operating system, and to have a great life, it starts by you putting your life first before you do anything else each day. Some people, like I just heard Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis, two amazing people. Both of them said that the first thing they do each day is spend 10 minutes and meditate. Well, they're that's how you become successful is before you get going on all the other stuff and you're reactive to all the things that are going on, you put you first, and they're meditating. Tony's doing a version of what I'm teaching. He talks about how Think and Grow Rich has transformed his life, and so that's the message I think to anybody out there is the way to have a successful life is when you start each day, you're either meditating or you're doing a technique like I'll teach you.
Absolutely. And just got two more questions for you. What is the disadvantage of being a millionaire and also the advantage of it? Something that you really, really enjoy about it.
The pure advantage of it is just the freedom. I mean,
Something
I
outside of that though, something that like, some people don't really touch on that you can really just say as well. Cause we know that's a whole lot, but it's a game changer. So if you can touch more on that.
well, I think you the freedom allows me to help other people, and
Right.
again, I was so felt so uh, grateful for this impacting my life that I'm like, boy, I want to help other people. That's what, and I'm all about helping people that will help themselves. And respectfully, I'm not that interested in helping people that don't want to help themselves.
Right.
I'm glad there are organizations that will do that, and I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but because a lot of people they don't help themselves because they can't help themselves, and I get that. But I'm all about helping people that will help themselves. And
Yes.
you know, I'm not worried about making money. I'm my legacy is to honor the blessings I've had and help other people. And this is the best way I know how to do that.
Being a service to others is key.
Right.
You know, they say if leadership is beneath you, well, they say if service to others is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. Something
Right.
like that
Yeah.
along those
Yeah.
lines.
Right.
But my last question, John, when it's all said and done, what does Mr. John Mitchell want to be remembered for?
For changing the world.
Mm.
I mean that I say that, but I see that if I've got the top application in the world at the top book in the world, I can change the world, and
Mm.
I intend to change the world. I'm going to get better at sharing my message and getting this out. I spent 6 years of my life doing this, getting it to the point where I made it work on other people, and we created an online course. And this year we're just now finishing up the marketing, and so you know now I can really give this to a lot of people. And fortunately, we've had so many people that are doing it now, and it's having you know transformative effects on them. It just energizes me to share with more people.
Absolutely. What's next for you coming up 2020?
Um, I'm taking this to the sports world. I work with the University of Texas coaches and teach them how to use the subconscious mind to enhance athletic performance. And so I do something with them twice a week, and I'm got something rolling with the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
Uh, and so there's a whole sports component of this. And uh, I have a great partner uh, that actually was a podcast host that interviewed me um almost 2 years ago, and it had such a transformative effect on her that uh, she wanted to become partners with me on this. And I'm like, great. She was already really successful, but it
Right.
took her income to seven figures as well. And
Wow.
so she's just a delight, and she's 20 years younger than I am, and she can relate to the female audience maybe better than I can. So
Yeah.
a lot of things in 2020 are cooking.
Yes, yes. It's always big to bring somebody along and share that success with. John, it's been an amazing time, man. Before we get out of here, if you can share your social media or just your website, everybody can connect with. Most
Okay.
importantly, get that technique, that 12-minute a day technique.
So go to theunfairedge.com, theunfairedge.com, and that'll allow you to take my free webinar, and I promise it'll change your life.
Mm. That's powerful. Guys, if you've been listening today, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your time, taking time out to sit down with me and John and really listening to this interview. We appreciate the support. Ladies and gentlemen, just do me a favor, go on iTunes right now, leave us a review based on what really intrigued you most from this interview with John Mitchell from out of Austin, Texas. Incredible individual, entrepreneur, investor, mentor, professor, father, many more. Honestly, this guy is an amazing individual, and I just want you all to connect with him, reach out to him, and tell him what stood out most to you guys from this interview. I wanted to share a quote that intrigued me as I was really chopping it up with John. I want you all to grab a hold on your life and just make it happen, honestly. And this is the Inspire Before We Expire. That's the one and only John Mitchell. I'm Terrell Sumter. Guys, you have a great week. Stay blessed, and we're out. Woo! My man.